My name is Irene, and at 67 years old, I never imagined waking up in a hospital room surrounded by beeping machines. The doctors had called my only son during my emergency, but his response still cuts deep. I'm busy taking my wife to dinner, even when told it might be my last night alive. 1 week later, I walked out of that hospital and made a single call to my bank. 2 hours later, he was at my doorstep in complete panic. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. I spent 40 years of my life as an elementary school teacher in Denver, Colorado. I loved every minute of it, watching young minds blossom and grow under my care. I retired 5 years ago, thinking I'd spend my golden years surrounded by family, especially my son Thomas. Thomas is 42 now, a successful businessman who runs his own marketing firm downtown. He always had a sharp mind for business, even as a child when he'd set up elaborate lemonade stands in our neighborhood. I was so proud watching him graduate from business school, knowing all our sacrifices had been worth it. My husband Frank passed away from pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. We'd been married for 43 years, and his absence left a hole in my life I didn't know how to fill. Frank was always the bridge between Thomas and me, smoothing over our occasional differences with his patient nature. After Frank died, I noticed a change in Thomas. The weekly dinners at my house became monthly, then quarterly. Phone calls grew shorter often, with Thomas claiming he was too busy with work to talk. I told myself it was just grief changing him, that he'd come back around eventually. Then Thomas met Jennifer. She was beautiful, polished, and 12 years younger than him. From our first meeting, something felt off about her. She smiled with her mouth, but never her eyes when talking to me. She'd make comments about my quaint home or how sweet it was that I still cooked from scratch, each compliment feeling like a thinly veiled criticism. After they married 2 years ago, the distance between Thomas and me grew even wider. Jennifer always seemed to have plans when I invited them over. If they did visit, she'd check her watch repeatedly or find reasons why they needed to leave early. I once overheard her telling Thomas that they didn't need to waste their Sunday with his mother when they could be networking with people who actually matter. I tried maintaining our relationship. I sent thoughtful gifts, left cheerful voicemails, and even learned to text so I could send him messages that wouldn't require immediate responses. Nothing seemed to bridge the growing gap between us. Last year, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but it required daily medication and regular checkups. I told Thomas, who seemed concerned during our brief call, but never followed up afterward to see how I was doing. My home, once filled with family laughter, grew quiet. My golden retriever Scout became my main companion. I wasn't completely alone, thankfully. I had my book club that met every Thursday, and I still had lunch with former teaching colleagues once a month. But family is different, or at least I thought it should be. On my birthday 3 months ago, Thomas didn't call, not even a text message. It was the first time in his entire life he hadn't acknowledged my birthday in some way. That night, I cried myself to sleep, clutching the photo album from when Thomas was young, wondering where that sweet boy had gone. The day that changed everything started like any other. I woke up at 6, made my cup of Earl Grey tea, and took Scout for his morning walk around the block. The spring air felt particularly lovely that morning, with tulips blooming in nearly every yard. By mid-afternoon, I started feeling strange. There was a tightness in my chest that came and went, and I felt unusually tired. I chalked it up to working too hard in the garden that morning and decided to rest on the sofa. In my concern about finishing my gardening, I'd completely forgotten to take my heart medication. As evening approached, I felt well enough to finish watering my new rose bushes. I was in the backyard when suddenly the world tilted sideways. The watering can slipped from my hand. I remember trying to call out for help, but my voice wouldn't work. Then everything went black. My neighbor Amanda found me collapsed near my rose bushes. She'd come over to return a casserole dish and grew concerned when I didn't answer the doorbell. She later told me she checked the backyard and saw me lying motionless on the grass. Amanda immediately called 911. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed into action. They stabilized me enough for transport, loading me into the ambulance with sirens blaring. According to Amanda, one of the paramedics told her it was touch and go. In the emergency room, doctors and nurses worked frantically. My blood pressure had dropped dangerously low and my heart was beating in an irregular pattern. The medical team administered medications, attached monitoring equipment, and worked to stabilize my condition. Someone found my emergency contact information in my wallet. Thomas's name and number were right there listed as my only immediate family. The charge nurse, Sandra, made the call herself. Sandra later described the conversation to me in detail. She'd identified herself as calling from Denver Memorial Hospital's emergency department. She explained I'd been brought in unconscious following what appeared to be a serious cardiac event. Then she told Thomas that the situation was critical and that he should come to the hospital as soon as possible. His response stunned her. "I'm busy. I'm taking my wife to dinner. She doesn't have much time anyway." Even when Sandra emphasized the severity of my condition, saying the doctors weren't sure I'd make it through the night, Thomas remained unmoved. "We have reservations at Le Bistro for our anniversary. It took months to get. Mom's been having health scares for years. She'll be fine," he said before hanging up. Sandra, who'd been a nurse for 27 years, told me she'd rarely been so shocked by a family member's response. She immediately reported the conversation to the social worker on duty. Meanwhile, I was slipping in and out of consciousness. The cardiologist explained later that I'd experienced a severe cardiac arrhythmia, likely triggered by missed medication combined with overexertion. My heart had essentially been beating so irregularly that it couldn't effectively pump blood to my brain and other organs. "If your neighbor hadn't found you when she did, Dr. Patterson told me, we wouldn't be having this conversation." That first night, the medical staff wasn't sure I would survive until morning. A kind night nurse named Gloria sat with me during her breaks, holding my hand and talking to me softly, even though I was mostly unconscious. She told me later she couldn't bear the thought of me being alone when things were so precarious. I woke up the next morning groggy and confused. My throat felt raw from the breathing tube they'd inserted during the night. A nurse named Sophia was checking my vitals when I opened my eyes. "Welcome back," she said with a gentle smile. "You gave us quite a scare." As my mind cleared, I asked about my son. Had anyone called him? Was he on his way? The expression on Sophia's face told me everything before she spoke a word. "We did call your emergency contact," she said carefully. "He was informed about your condition." I pressed her for more details, and eventually she reluctantly shared what had happened. Hearing my son's exact words felt like another heart attack this time, emotional rather than physical. The pain was overwhelming. He said he was busy taking his wife to dinner. I repeated, tears forming in my eyes, even when told I might not make it through the night. Sophia nodded, sadly, taking my hand in hers. "I'm so sorry." In that hospital bed, memories flooded back with painful clarity. I remembered staying up for 3 straight nights when Thomas had pneumonia at age 7, sleeping in a chair by his bed to monitor his breathing. I thought about the years I'd spent essentially as a single parent, while Frank worked construction jobs out of state to pay for our mortgage. I'd taken on extra tutoring jobs to save for Thomas's college fund. When he decided on an expensive business school instead of the state university where I'd have gotten a tuition discount as a teacher, Frank and I remortgaged our house to help him graduate debt-free. When Thomas's first business venture failed in his late 20s, I gave him my entire retirement bonus to help him stay afloat. When he and Jennifer were saving for their house they lived in our finished basement rent-free for nearly a year. Later, I loaned them $30,000 for their down payment money from Frank's life insurance that I never asked to be repaid, despite living on my modest teacher's pension. All these memories swirled together as I lay there, machines beeping around me. I'd always thought these sacrifices were what parents did for their children, acts of love that would be recognized and in some way reciprocated when needed. Not with money, but with care and presence. "I've always been there for him," I whispered more to myself than to Sophia. "Always," Sophia squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest." Dr. Patterson came in to check on me mid-morning. He seemed pleasantly surprised by my improvement, but warned that I was still in serious condition. The next 48 hours would be critical. He mentioned they'd tried calling Thomas again to update him on my condition, but the call had gone straight to voicemail. As the initial shock and hurt began to subside, I felt something else taking its place. Anger. Not a hot, volatile anger, but something colder and more resolute. For decades, I had made excuses for Thomas's behavior, always giving him the benefit of the doubt. But this time, there was no possible explanation that could soften the reality of his choices. By my third day in the hospital, my condition had stabilized enough that Dr. Patterson was cautiously optimistic. My heart rhythm had normalized, and my blood pressure was approaching normal levels. Amanda came to visit, bringing a small vase of flowers from my own garden. She'd been taking care of Scout and checking on my house daily. During her visit, she seemed unusually hesitant, checking her phone repeatedly and avoiding certain topics. "What is it, Amanda?" I finally asked. "You seem like you're keeping something from me." She sighed, pulling out her phone. "I didn't want to upset you, but I thought you should know." She showed me Thomas's social media page. There were photos from the night I was admitted to the hospital, the night doctors weren't sure I'd survive. Thomas and Jennifer were at Le Bistro raising champagne glasses with wide smiles. The caption read, "Celebrating 3 amazing years with my gorgeous wife. Nothing is more important than making memories with the one you love." Nothing is more important, not even his dying mother. The photos continued through the evening, documenting their 7-course meal, the live band, and their dancing, all while I fought for my life with strangers at my side instead of family. "There's something else," Amanda said, her voice dropping. "I wasn't going to say anything, but given everything that's happened." She explained that through mutual friends she'd heard rumors about Thomas and Jennifer discussing my house. Apparently, Jennifer had been telling people that my 4-bedroom home was wasted on one old woman and that they planned to sell it for a substantial profit once I eventually passed away. "They were at the Hendersons' dinner party last month," Amanda continued reluctantly. "Susan Henderson told me Jennifer was quite open about their plans, saying they could probably get $700,000 for your property in this market. I felt physically ill. My home wasn't just a financial asset. It was where Frank and I had built our life, where every corner held memories. The garden was where Frank had proposed to me 46 years ago. The kitchen was where we'd celebrated every milestone in Thomas's life." Later that afternoon, the hospital social worker, Maria, came to speak with me. She'd been informed about Thomas's response and wanted to discuss my situation. "Is Thomas your power of attorney?" she asked gently. "Yes," I replied. "Frank and I set that up years ago. Thomas is also the primary beneficiary in my will." Maria nodded thoughtfully. "Given the circumstances, I want to make sure you're aware of your options. What you've described could potentially fall under elder neglect or exploitation. There are ways to protect yourself legally if you have concerns." For the first time, I allowed myself to see my relationship with Thomas objectively. It wasn't just this one incident, but a pattern that had been building for years. I'd been giving and giving while receiving less and less in return. That evening, my friend Marion visited. We'd taught together for 20 years before retiring. I told her everything, including what Amanda had shared about Thomas and Jennifer's plans for my house. "John can help," Marion said firmly, referring to her husband, who was a retired attorney. "This is elder abuse, Irene. Plain and simple. You need to protect yourself." As she left, Marion squeezed my hand. "You're fighting for your life right now, but you also need to fight for your independence and dignity." That night, lying in the hospital bed, I made a decision. I would not only recover from this health crisis, but I would also reclaim control of my life and protect myself from those who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenience or a future inheritance. Over the next few days, my recovery surprised everyone, including Dr. Patterson. "You've got quite a will to live, Irene," he commented during his morning rounds. I threw myself into physical therapy sessions, pushing myself harder than the therapists expected. Between medical treatments, I began forming connections with the hospital staff and other patients. Sophia introduced me to another patient, Eleanor, who had experienced similar family issues. Talking with her helped me realize I wasn't alone in my struggles. The hospital had made multiple attempts to contact Thomas, but he never answered or returned their calls. On the 5th day, I received a call from Jennifer, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "We've just been so busy with Thomas's new client," she explained, "but we've been thinking about you." During our conversation, Jennifer asked pointed questions about my insurance coverage and whether the doctors had mentioned how long my recovery might take. She never once asked how I was feeling or if I needed anything. "The doctors say I'm very confused," I told her, deliberately slurring my words slightly. Sometimes I don't even know what day it is. Oh, that's terrible, Jennifer replied, though I detected a note of satisfaction in her voice. Have they said anything about when you might be released or if you'll need alternative living arrangements afterward? They're not sure I'll be able to live independently anymore. I lied, watching her reaction. I might need full-time care. That same day, Marion brought her husband John to visit me. While Jennifer believed I was mentally compromised, John and I had a lengthy, lucid conversation about my legal options. As a former estate planning attorney, he outlined exactly what steps we needed to take. With John's guidance, I signed papers revoking Thomas's power of attorney, replacing him with Marion. We also drafted a new healthcare directive naming Amanda as my healthcare proxy. A notary from the hospital's administrative office came to my room to make everything official. John arranged for a bank representative to visit me the following day. I closed my joint account with Thomas's name on it and opened a new one only I could access. I learned Thomas had already attempted to use his power of attorney to inquire about my accounts, claiming concern about paying my medical bills. Throughout all this, I maintained the appearance of a much sicker woman whenever hospital staff who didn't need to know were present. If Thomas or Jennifer called the nurses' station for updates, they were told I remained in serious condition, still experiencing confusion and weakness. Meanwhile, Dr. Patterson was pleased with my progress. "Your recovery has been remarkable," he told me on the 6th day. "If things continue this way, we could consider discharge earlier than expected." We made arrangements for my release that only Amanda and Marion knew about. The discharge was scheduled for exactly 1 week after my admission, but we told no one else. "Better to have you safely home before certain people realize you're well enough to manage your affairs," John advised. Amanda drove me home on the 7th day, her sedan loaded with my small bag of personal items and a folder thick with medical and legal documents. Seeing my little blue house come into view brought tears to my eyes. After coming so close to death, everything looked more vibrant, more precious. Amanda had kept everything exactly as I'd left it. The mail was sorted on the kitchen table, plants watered, and surfaces dusted. The emotional reunion with Scout was overwhelming, with him whining and licking my hands as if he couldn't believe I was really home. While Amanda helped me settle in, I checked that important documents and valuables were still secure in the lockbox in my closet. Everything was exactly where it should be, untouched. After a light lunch, I made the call that would set everything in motion. I contacted my bank manager, Harold, who had been briefed by John about the situation. "Everything is ready on our end, Irene," Harold assured me. "Are you certain you want to proceed this way?" "Absolutely," I confirmed. "Please call Thomas and tell him there's an urgent matter regarding my accounts that requires his immediate attention. You can mention that it involves a large withdrawal, but don't give any other details." While waiting, Amanda helped me prepare the living room. We set up chairs facing each other, made sure my new legal documents were within easy reach, and Amanda placed her phone on the side table, ready to record if necessary. Almost exactly 2 hours after the bank's call, I heard a car screech into my driveway. Through the window, I watched Thomas rush toward the house, his face contorted with panic. He didn't even close his car door. He burst through the front door without knocking. "Mom!" he called out, his voice echoing through the house. When he entered the living room and saw me sitting calmly in my armchair, he froze. "Hello, Thomas," I said steadily. You're home. You're okay." Confusion replaced panic on his face. "The hospital said you were still in serious condition. The bank called about a problem with your accounts." "Yes, there is a problem with the accounts," I replied. "I've closed them." The confusion on his face transformed into anger. "What are you talking about? Why would you do that without discussing it with me first? I'm your power of attorney." "Not anymore," I stated, my voice remarkably calm despite my racing heart. Before Thomas could respond, the front door opened again and Jennifer walked in. She stopped abruptly upon seeing me, unable to hide the flash of disappointment that crossed her face. "What's going on?" she demanded, looking between Thomas and me. "Mom's apparently been making financial decisions without consulting us," Thomas said, his voice rising. "She's closed the accounts." Jennifer's carefully composed facade cracked. "You can't do that. Thomas is supposed to be handling your finances. You're not well enough to make these decisions." "Actually, I'm perfectly well enough, as confirmed by my doctors." I replied, picking up a folder from the side table. And I've made several decisions during my recovery. I explained the changes I'd made from revoking Thomas's power of attorney to changing my will. With each revelation, Thomas's face grew redder. "This is ridiculous," he exploded. "I was busy one time when the hospital called, and now you're punishing me. This is why Dad always said you were too sensitive." "Busy?" I echoed, my composure finally breaking. "You told the nurse you were too busy taking your wife to dinner to come see me when they weren't sure I would survive the night." Thomas faltered. "They were exaggerating. Hospitals always make things sound worse than they are." "Let's hear exactly what was said, shall we?" Amanda suggested, pressing play on her phone. The recording began, Sandra's professional voice clearly stating the severity of my condition, followed by Thomas's dismissive response. Hearing it again made my heart ache, but I kept my eyes fixed on my son's face. For the first time, I saw shame flash across his features. "That doesn't prove anything," Jennifer interjected. "We were celebrating our anniversary. Your timing was inconsiderate as usual." "Inconsiderate," I repeated. "I apologize that my near-death experience inconvenienced your dinner plans." Jennifer scoffed. "You've always been dramatic. This is exactly why we've been discussing whether you should be in a more supervised living situation. This house is far too much for someone in your condition. It would make more sense for us to sell it and use the money for a nice retirement facility." "We weren't discussing that," Thomas said quickly, shooting Jennifer a warning look. "Don't lie, Thomas. We've talked about it for months," Jennifer snapped. $700,000 would buy a lot more than a retirement home deposit. We could finally get the lake house we wanted." The room fell silent as Jennifer realized what she'd revealed. Thomas looked mortified. "I think you've both made your positions clear," I said quietly. "Now let me make mine clear. This house remains my property. My finances are no longer accessible to either of you. And while I once hoped to leave a legacy for my son, my new will reflects the reality of our relationship." Thomas's expression hardened. "You can't do this. I'll contest it. I'll get a court order declaring you incompetent." "You're welcome to try," I replied. "I have documentation from multiple medical professionals confirming my mental competence. I have witness statements about your neglect during a life-threatening medical emergency. And now, thanks to Jennifer, I have an admission of your plans to sell my home for your own benefit." Thomas and Jennifer left 20 minutes later, slamming the door behind them. Their parting words were threats of legal action and accusations of betrayal. But for the first time in years, despite the emotional turmoil, I felt truly in control of my own life. The days following Thomas and Jennifer's visit were difficult but healing. There's a special kind of grief that comes with losing a relationship with someone who is still alive. I mourned the son I thought I had, the one I'd spent decades loving unconditionally, but alongside that grief came an unexpected sense of liberation. For too long, I had defined myself primarily as Thomas's mother, placing his needs and wishes above my own. Now I was rediscovering who Irene was beyond that role. Amanda and her husband David invited me for dinner every Sunday, insisting I was now part of their family. Marion organized a welcome home gathering with other retired teachers, filling my dining room with laughter for the first time in years. I joined a senior center where I took water aerobics classes 3 times a week, both for my heart health and for the new friendships that blossomed there. I met Harold, a kind widower who asked me to join him for coffee after class. That coffee date led to concert outings and museum visits, adding a gentle warmth to my days. Marion and I took the trip to Santa Fe we'd been talking about for years but had always postponed. Standing in Georgia O'Keeffe's garden, I felt Frank's presence beside me, imagining his proud smile at seeing me embrace life again. I started volunteering at a local literacy program, reading to children once a week. Their enthusiastic hugs and innocent questions reminded me why I'd loved teaching so much. In their company, the pain of family estrangement faded temporarily. Thomas called a few times in the months that followed, usually when he needed something. Once, for a loan when his business faced cash flow issues, and again when he and Jennifer were applying for a membership at an exclusive country club and needed family references. Each time I was polite but firm in my refusal. 6 months after my hospitalization, Thomas showed up at my door unannounced. He looked different, thinner, and less polished than usual. "Jennifer left me," he said without preamble. She's been having an affair with one of our clients, a younger man with more money. I invited him in and made tea listening as he unraveled the story of his failed marriage and his growing realization of Jennifer's true character. I'm sorry for how I treated you, Mom, he said, eventually staring into his cup. I got caught up in Jennifer's world, her values. I forgot what really matters. His apology seemed genuine, but years of disappointment had taught me caution. I appreciate that, Thomas, truly. But trust once broken takes time to rebuild. We've been taking small steps toward reconnection since then. Sunday dinners once a month, phone calls that focus on genuine conversation rather than requests for money. I've been clear that our relationship must be built on mutual respect, not financial dependence. The most valuable lesson from this experience was learning that love shouldn't require the sacrifice of dignity or self-respect. Family relationships, like all relationships, need boundaries to remain healthy. Today, my life is rich with meaningful connections. My chosen family of friends brings me joy and support. Scout still greets each morning with enthusiastic tail wags. My garden continues to bloom under my care. That medical emergency nearly took my life, but in a strange way, it showed me how to truly live. By facing the painful truth about my relationship with Thomas, I found the strength to reclaim my independence and self-worth. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own relationships, remember that it's never too late to establish boundaries. Age doesn't diminish your right to respect and consideration. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and others is to stand firm in your own value. What boundaries have you had to set with family members? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening. And remember, the greatest gift you can give yourself is self-respect.